Today, we're exploring the deadliest anti-tank weapons of World War II and what made them so feared, starting with number 1. Cannon to 25mm SEL MLE 1934, France, 1934. France fielded the 25mm SEL MLE 1934 as its principal infantry anti-tank gun. Developed in 1934 and issued widely to divisions along the Maginot Line and the mobile forces massed to meet a German invasion. It saw its defining test during the 6-week campaign of May and June 1940, when French gunners engaged advancing panzer columns across Belgium and the Ardennes. Its low profile and flat trajectory made it accurate against early German tanks, but its small caliber left it struggling against anything beyond light armor, and crews often found their shells deflecting off angled German plate at combat ranges. As the German breakthrough at Sedan collapsed the French line, entire anti-tank batteries were overrun before they could relocate, their guns too light to slow the pace of the advance. French gun crews who held their positions against oncoming armor frequently paid with their lives, since the weapon demanded close range to be effective at all. Its failure to stop the 1940 invasion became one of the starkest lessons of the collapse, a well-made gun rendered obsolete by the speed and weight of the forces it faced. Number 2. Polish WZ.35 UR anti-tank rifle, Poland, 1935. Poland introduced the WZ-35 UR anti-tank rifle in 1935, a closely guarded secret weapon whose very existence was kept hidden from German intelligence until the September 1939 invasion revealed it in combat. Firing a high-velocity 7.92mm round, it proved capable of penetrating the thin armor of early German Panzer I and II tanks, giving Polish infantry a genuine, if narrow, advantage in the war's opening battles. Its effectiveness depended entirely on range and angle, and crews who fired too early or from poor cover often failed to penetrate at all, drawing immediate return fire from tank machine guns. As German armor pushed deeper into Polish territory and overwhelmed defensive lines within weeks, isolated rifle teams found themselves outnumbered and outpaced, with little time to reposition between engagements. Losses among Polish anti-tank crews were heavy during the campaign's final days, as the speed of the German advance left little opportunity for the weapon's strengths to matter strategically. Though tactically effective in isolated engagements, it could not offset the scale of the invasion, and it disappeared from service after Poland's defeat in October 1939. Number 3. Cannoni da 47, 32, Italy, 1935. Italy adopted the Cannoni da 47, 32 in 1935 as its standard infantry anti-tank and support gun, deploying it widely across the North African campaign and the mountainous fighting in Greece and the Balkans. Its dual role as both an anti-tank weapon and a close support gun made it versatile, and Italian crews used it effectively against early British armor in the desert battles of 1940 and 1941. That effectiveness faded as heavier British tanks like the Matilda arrived, their thick armor shrugging off the gun's modest shells at all but point-blank range. Italian gun crews, often lacking adequate transport and reinforcement in the desert theater, found themselves stranded and overrun when British armored counterattacks broke through weakly held lines. Losses during the Operation Compass disaster in late 1940 were severe, with entire batteries captured or destroyed as British forces advanced with little the gun could do to stop them. Its story reflects a broader pattern in Italy's Desert War: adequate equipment undermined by logistical strain, and an enemy that adapted its armor faster than Italian guns could answer. Number 4. PaK 36, Germany, 1936. Germany's PaK 36 entered service in 1936 and formed the backbone of the Wehrmacht's anti-tank defense during the invasions of Poland and France, where its 37mm shells proved lethal against the light armor of the era. That success collapsed almost overnight in the summer of 1941, when German gun crews in Russia opened fire on the newly encountered T-34 and watched their rounds bounce harmlessly off its sloped armor. Soldiers began calling it the door knocker, a grim joke born from the sound of shells striking steel without penetrating. Crews who had trusted the weapon through 2 campaigns now found themselves helpless as Soviet tanks rolled directly over their positions, and anti-tank units suffered heavy losses trying to compensate with volume of fire instead of penetrating power. The psychological toll was severe, since infantry who had relied on these guns for protection now watched them fail at the moment it mattered most. It remained in secondary use for specialized ammunition, but its reputation as a war-winning weapon was permanently broken by the T-34's arrival. Number 5. 2-pounder gun, United Kingdom, 1936. Britain's 2-pounder anti-tank gun entered service in 1936 and became the mainstay of British armored defense in France and throughout the early North African campaign. Firing a 40mm solid shot, it performed adequately against the thin-skinned Italian and early German tanks it first encountered near Tobruk and Sidi Barrani. Its low profile made it difficult for enemy gunners to spot, but that same design left it firing only armor-piercing shot, with no high-explosive round to deal with anti-tank guns or infantry threatening the crew directly. When the German Afrika Korps introduced up-armored Panzer III and IV variants, the 2-pounder's shells simply failed to penetrate at meaningful range, forcing British gun crews into close, exposed engagements. Entire batteries were overrun during the seesaw battles of 1941 and 1942, their guns silent against armor they could no longer defeat. The weapon's decline was a hard lesson in how quickly a battlefield advantage could evaporate, and it was steadily withdrawn from frontline duty as the heavier 6-pounder took its place. Number 6. 8.8 cm Flak 18, 36, Germany, 1936. Germany's 8.8 cm flak gun entered service in 1936 as an anti-aircraft weapon, but its flat trajectory and immense velocity made it devastating when German commanders in North Africa began using it against Allied tanks from 1941 onward. Deployed by Rommel's Afrika Korps, it destroyed British Matilda and Crusader tanks at ranges far beyond what any dedicated anti-tank gun of the period could match, catching Allied crews completely off guard. Its size made concealment difficult, and once spotted, the gun and its crew became priority targets for counter-battery fire and strafing aircraft, since destroying it removed the single greatest threat on the battlefield. German gun crews who operated it in the anti-tank role faced constant exposure, often working in the open desert with minimal cover while towing the weapon into position under fire. Allied tank losses to the 88 during battles like Sidi Rezeg became legendary, feeding an outsized fear of the weapon among Allied crews for the rest of the war. Its dual-purpose success ultimately shaped the design of dedicated anti-tank guns that followed, including its own direct descendant, the Pak-43. Number 7. Boys anti-tank rifle, United Kingdom, 1937. Britain fielded the Boys anti-tank rifle in 1937, a bolt-action .55 caliber weapon issued to infantry sections as their primary man-portable defense against armor. It went to France with the British Expeditionary Force in 1940 and later to North Africa, where desert fighting exposed its limits in brutal fashion. The rifle weighed over 16 kilograms and delivered a punishing recoil that bruised shoulders and shook aim on every shot, while its penetration barely reached 30 millimeters at useful range. Against German Panzer III and IV tanks arriving in Libya, that figure was simply not enough, and crews who fired directly into oncoming armor often watched rounds skip off without effect. Soldiers came to dread being issued the weapon, since using it correctly meant holding position until a tank closed to suicidal range. It faded from frontline service by 1942, remembered less for what it destroyed and more for the exposure it forced upon the men who carried it. Number 8. 45mm anti-tank gun M1937, Soviet Union, 1937. The Soviet 45mm M1937 anti-tank gun, refined from an earlier German design, entered Red Army service in 1937 and stood as the primary anti-armor weapon during the catastrophic defeats of 1941. It fought in the retreats across Belarus and Ukraine, where crews often had only seconds to engage before being overrun by advancing panzer columns. Effective against early German tanks, it struggled badly once the Wehrmacht introduced additional armor plating on the Panzer III and IV, forcing gunners to hold fire until enemy tanks closed to dangerously short range. Soviet crews nicknamed it grimly for its declining stopping power, and anti-tank regiments absorbed staggering losses in 1941 and 1942 as guns were overrun or destroyed before they could fire a second round. Despite these flaws, its light weight allowed rapid repositioning, and desperate crews used that mobility to strike from ambush rather than head-on. The weapon's story reflects the larger Soviet experience of that period, surviving on sacrifice and improvisation while waiting for heavier guns to reach the front. Number 9. Lottie L. 39, Finland, 1939. Finland fielded the Lottie L-39 anti-tank rifle in 1939, just as the Soviet Union launched its invasion in the Winter War, giving Finnish troops a heavy 20mm weapon capable of punishing Soviet armor in the brutal forest fighting along the eastern frontier. Its size and weight made it difficult to move through deep snow, and two-man crews often had to drag it by sled between firing positions while temperatures fell far below freezing. Against early Soviet light tanks it proved surprisingly effective, but as heavier armor appeared later in the continuation war, its penetration became marginal, forcing gunners to target tracks and vision ports rather than the hull directly. Finnish crews operating in exposed forward positions faced constant risk from Soviet infantry and tank machine gun fire while waiting for armor to close within range. Several crews were overrun during Soviet breakthroughs when the weapon's slow single-shot cycle left no time to fire twice. Despite these dangers, its success against the initial Soviet invasion became a symbol of Finnish resistance, a weapon whose reputation outgrew its actual numbers in service. Number 10 ZIS 376mm divisional gun. Soviet Union, 1941. The Soviet ZIS-3 entered service in 1941 as a dual-purpose divisional gun, pressed into anti-tank duty out of necessity as German armor advanced deep into Russian territory. It fought from the defense of Moscow through Stalingrad and into the great tank battles of Kursk, where Soviet gunners used its 76mm shells against the full range of German armor. Its dual role as both field artillery and anti-tank weapon meant crews were rarely dedicated specialists, often thrust into direct-fire duels against tanks with training suited more for indirect bombardment. Against the frontal armor of Tiger tanks at Kursk, the gun struggled badly, and Soviet accounts describe batteries destroyed in rapid succession as German armor closed the range their shells could not penetrate. Losses among ZIS-3 crews during that battle were significant, a hard reminder that mass production could not fully substitute for specialized anti-tank firepower. Its sheer numbers and versatility nonetheless made it indispensable, a weapon that won through volume and resilience rather than raw penetrating power. If there's a World War II anti-tank weapon you think should have been featured, let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more World War II weapons, battlefield technology, and military history documentaries. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.